Welcome back to The Deep Dive, where we tear through a stack of insight-rich sources to give you the blueprint for becoming well-informed, fast.
And today we are going deep.
We really are. We're focusing on something that I think is, well, universal. Personal transformation.
Exactly. We've been immersed in sources, from behavioral psychology to habit formation guides, all focused on a singular paradox.
Which is?
Achieving profound, life-altering change. But not through some massive, heroic declaration. It's through tiny, almost boring, consistent, daily increments.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the central observation that really launched this deep dive is something we all see around us. You see it all the time.
Absolutely.
Why is it that some people, and you know who I'm talking about, they seem to completely rewrite their personal narrative? They turn their lives around, achieve incredible success, while others, who are just as smart, just as capable, seem utterly stuck.
Right, just stuck in the same repeating, frustrating cycle.
So is the difference purely luck? Or is there something else going on, a different approach they're using that maybe the rest of us overlook?
Well, when you really dig into it, it's almost never luck. It's nearly always a deliberate, systematic approach.
Okay.
And it's rooted in two things: consistency and mindset. Our sources drive this point home with a really great analogy.
Which is?
The challenge of learning a complex skill, like a new language. Let's just stick with English for a second, since it's so often cited as one of the most structurally complicated languages to master.
Right. I remember this feeling when you start, the sheer volume of material is just, it's paralyzing.
Totally paralyzed.
You've got too many words, hundreds of thousands of them. The grammar rules are just exceptions to exceptions.
And the exceptions have exceptions.
Exactly. And the thought of holding a fluent conversation feels like trying to climb Mount Everest in flip-flops. It's just overwhelming because the goal looks so enormous.
That initial feeling of impossibility is the paradox that derails most people.
How so?
They approach the challenge cognitively. They think the breakthrough is about absorbing a giant database of vocabulary or memorizing every grammar rule.
So they think, if I just learn 5,000 words this month, then I'll be ready.
Precisely. But the sources highlight that the real sustainable breakthrough isn't just about cognitive knowledge. It's behavioral. It's identity-driven.
So it's about building the daily habits, changing your fundamental beliefs about the difficulty.
And, critically, daring to actually use what you learn.
Imperfectly.
Yes, imperfectly, every single day. The same exact mechanism that drives fluency is what drives major life transformation.
So that really defines the mission of this deep dive for you, the listener.
It does. We're focusing on that often invisible mechanism of change. We are looking at how big transformations are achieved, not through one dramatic decision.
Like quitting your job or moving across the country tomorrow.
Right. But through the quiet, cumulative accumulation of small, powerful changes made consistently, day in, day out.
But I have to ask the obvious question then. If this concept, change a little bit every day, is so simple, why do the vast majority of people struggle so much with it?
That's the million-dollar question.
We've all seen it, right? The massive crowds at the gym on January 1st.
Oh, yeah.
Or that intense enthusiasm for a new life overhaul on a Monday morning. And yet, by February, the gym is empty, the enthusiasm has evaporated. People are right back where they started.
Because, as the sources clearly articulate, change is inherently difficult. Even when it's for the better.
It's hard.
It requires friction, it demands effort, and it forces us to confront these deeply entrenched behavioral patterns and internal narratives we've had for years.
So staying comfortable is just easier.
It's the path of least resistance. Even if that comfort means staying stuck in a miserable loop, moving toward growth, while ultimately rewarding, is initially very difficult and uncertain.
So to give you a clear roadmap of how to navigate this difficult process, we've broken down the source material into 3 core interlocking areas.
Right. 3 areas that explain how this transformation through tiny increments works, and, more importantly, how to make it actually stick.
So where are we starting?
First, we're going to start by analyzing the specific, subtle barriers that stop us before we even begin. The internal self-sabotage mechanisms.
Okay.
Second, we'll dive deep into the mathematical and psychological power of small, consistent improvement. We'll detail the profound results of the 1% rule and, crucially, why people quit halfway through.
And finally,
we'll explore the inner and outer games, training your mind and optimizing your environment to make growth almost inevitable.
let's start right there, at that point of inertia, why we get stuck. The sources identified 4 incredibly common roadblocks or barriers that prevent us from taking that crucial first tiny step.
And the first one, this is the big one. It's the foundational block for virtually all procrastination and stagnation.
And that is?
The pervasive and often crippling fear of failure.
Ah, yes. The internal dialogue we know so well. We think about starting something new, a new career path, learning an instrument, sticking to a budget, and the immediate protective internal question is always, what if I try this, put in all my effort, and then I just spectacularly fail?
We catastrophize. We anticipate the embarrassment, the wasted time, the emotional cost.
And that feeling is highly rational, isn't it? I mean, failure does carry a real emotional cost, sometimes a financial one.
It does. It's not an irrational fear. But the key to dismantling this barrier, according to the analysis, is a powerful cognitive reframing.
A mind trick.
You could call it that. We need to stop dwelling on the downside avoidance, what if I fail? And rigorously force ourselves to focus on the upside potential.
So flip the question.
Exactly. Flip it to, what if you try and you actually succeed?
That mental shift, just changing that one question, it's not just powerful. It moves the needle from defensive procrastination to optimistic forward pursuit.
It's like changing the destination on your internal compass. Instead of navigating to avoid rock bottom, you're setting a course for the summit.
I like that.
And the sources stress a deeper understanding of failure itself. This is really important. Failure is not the opposite of success.
It's just data.
It is just data.
Yeah.
Every single successful person, every innovator we study has inevitably failed. Repeatedly.
So the difference isn't that they avoided failure.
That's impossible. No one avoids it. The difference is that they learned the lesson contained within the failure and immediately kept going after those failures.
They saw it as a temporary outcome, not a permanent identity.
That's the key distinction. It's an event, not who you are.
That makes perfect sense. And failure gives you the data you need to correct the 1% changes we'll talk about later.
Exactly. It's essential feedback.
Okay, let's move to barrier number 2. Lack of direction and the need for perfection.
Ah, yes. This is a classic crap because it disguises itself as being prudent.
It feels smart.
It feels very smart. It's often masked as meticulous planning, but in reality, it's a highly sophisticated form of procrastination that just prevents you from starting.
So people know they want a better life. They want to be fluent or fit or financially secure, but they get absolutely hung up on defining the perfect path to get there.
They believe, maybe subconsciously, that they need this bulletproof, flawless, step-by-step master plan.
One that anticipates every possible problem, every market shift, every mood swing.
Before they're even allowed to take step 1.
And that belief, that demand for a perfect plan, that becomes the ultimate trap, doesn't it?
It's often called analysis paralysis, and it prevents the very first necessary step from ever being taken.
The assumption is just fundamentally illogical. You think you need to know the entire journey before you start the hike.
But the sources suggest you only discover the path by walking it.
Okay, wait, I have to push back on that a little bit. Isn't some level of planning essential?
Of course.
I mean, if I decide I want to learn English, surely I need to know which books to buy or what app to use, or if I should focus on grammar first. Isn't jumping in completely blind almost guaranteeing failure?
That's a really valid point, and the sources don't argue against basic strategic planning at all, but they draw a crucial distinction.
And that is?
There's a massive difference between strategic readiness and paralyzing perfectionism.
Okay, break that down for me.
Strategic readiness involves defining the first small action. For example, I will download a language app and try it for 10 minutes. That's a plan.
And perfectionism.
Perfectionism demands defining step 1 all the way through to step 100 before you're willing to do step 1.
I see. So the latter turns planning into a stall tactic.
While the former actually initiates momentum, the goal is to define the next tiny imperfect action, not the flawless long-term result.
Right, imperfect action. I feel like that's a theme we're going to come back to.
Oh, absolutely.
So the third barrier, this one hits us right in the psyche. It's negative self-talk.
This is the internal saboteur. It often manifests as these limiting beliefs that are mentioned directly in the sources, and we often inherit them from childhood or past failures.
Can you give some examples?
Specific toxic phrases like, I'll never be good at this, or that highly specialized defense, I'm just not a language person.
Or I'm just not a math person. I'm terrible with money.
All of those. The implication here is just devastating because these thoughts halt progress not during the action, but long before any action can even begin.
Right. If you decide internally, with all the certainty of a fixed mindset, that you are fundamentally incapable, why on earth would your external self even bother trying?
You wouldn't. It creates a vicious, self-fulfilling prophecy. Your mind has already judged the outcome as impossible, and therefore it restricts your physical and mental effort.
So you stop practicing that vocabulary. You skip the workout.
Because the internal narrative has already guarantees failure. It's trying to spare you the supposed embarrassment of the attempt.
So dismantling this requires recognizing that thought, not as an objective fact, but as a deeply ingrained habitual pattern.
That's the first step, just noticing it as a pattern.
Okay, and finally, barrier number 4. The source material calls this one of the biggest and most insidious traps of the modern self-help era.
And that is waiting for motivation.
This is universal. We all hear it. We all say it.
All the time. I'll start working out when I feel the urge.
I'll start that difficult, important project when I feel supremely inspired or ready.
This reliance on a fleeting emotion to drive sustained, difficult behavior is just. It's fundamentally flawed. It sets us up for failure from the beginning.
Because, and this is the key insight, right? The secret sauce that separates those who change from those who stagnate.
It is.
Motivation is counterintuitive.
Completely.
It doesn't arrive first, spurring us to action. It is a biological reward that comes after we take action.
That is the critical loop. And understanding the neurochemistry here is vital. You don't wait for a feeling of motivation to go for a run.
You just force yourself to put on your shoes.
You put on your shoes and you take the first step. Once you've completed that small action walking just 1% of the way, your brain registers a small victory.
And that's when the good stuff happens.
That's when it releases a microdose of dopamine, the feel-good chemical, which is then registered by you as motivation. That feeling of accomplishment, the momentum, creates the motivation to continue tomorrow.
I can relate to this completely, especially in the context of trying to learn English. I remember I would sit down and just wait for that spark of inspiration to study grammar.
And how often did that spark actually show up?
Almost never. That moment of supreme inspiration, it never came. It was a phantom target.
So what changed?
The practice only started moving once I forced myself to just take the very first, smallest possible step.
The minimum viable action.
Yes, like just listening to a 5-minute news summary in English. Once that action, however small and imperfect, created momentum, then the desire, the motivation, it arrived. But it was riding on the back of the action I had already taken.
That experience perfectly illustrates the principle, the initial resistance, the inertia. That's the hardest part. Once that internal friction is broken, the physics of momentum take over, and your brain rewards you for breaking it.
So the fundamental takeaway from this first section is absolutely vital. Understanding exactly what's holding you back, that fear, that need for perfection, that negative voice, or that waiting game, that is the necessary first step.
You have to know what you're up against.
You can't fight an enemy you haven't identified, especially when that enemy is you.
So now that we've identified the roadblocks that stop us from even starting, let's pivot to the mechanism for sustainable long-term change.
Okay.
If dramatic overnight transformation is a myth, what is the predictable reality we should be aiming for?
And that's where we dive into section 2, the mathematical and psychological power of small daily improvements.
Or, as it's often branded in the sources, the 1% rule.
The human psychological tendency is to seek the dramatic, isn't it? We want the huge, immediate diet change, the grueling 10-hour study session.
The sweeping life overhaul announced with a big fanfare. And that intensity is the very misconception that leads straight to burnout.
So the reality, as our sources confirm, is that real, lasting, sustainable change happens gradually. It accumulates almost imperceptibly, often secretly.
Through small, daily, consistent improvements, it's profoundly boring in the short term.
But devastatingly effective in the long term.
And we can actually quantify this effectiveness using the mathematics of compounding.
This is the specific detail that's cited across multiple sources, and it's always mind-blowing.
It is. If you commit to improving just 1% every single day, the results over a year are not 365% better. They are exponential.
We are talking about being nearly 37.78 times better in a year than when you started.
Assuming perfect daily consistency.
The number always shocks people because you mentally default to linear growth, right? You just think you're adding 1% each time. But this is compounding in action.
You really have to think of it visually. Your efforts are multiplying the previous day's efforts, just like interest compounding in a bank account.
But the flip side is also true, and it's terrifying.
It is. A 1% decline in effort or focus every day also compounds. It leads to a near zero outcome over a year. You're down to 0.03.
So these small choices are really directional signals that just multiply over time.
They absolutely are.
But here's where I have to introduce the friction. That compounding effect is completely invisible in the short term.
Yes, this is the hard part.
If I improve by 1% today, I run 1 extra minute, I learn 1 extra phrase, I won't feel 37 times better tomorrow, or even next week.
Not at all.
And this is the precise point where most people quit. They believe the small action is meaningless and the effort is wasted.
You're hitting on the most crucial psychological challenge of the 1% rule. It's what's often called the plateau of latent potential.
Okay, the plateau of latent potential. Tell me more.
This is the psychological pain point where most people throw in the towel.
Because nothing seems to be happening.
Exactly. They don't realize that those first several months are foundational. The effort is building the system, the neurological pathways, the internal discipline, the physical capacity. But the visible, dramatic results don't emerge until the compounding curve begins its steep ascent.
And that's months later.
Often months, sometimes longer. So they're climbing this psychological slope where effort doesn't immediately equal reward. They feel like they're running on a treadmill, putting in maximum effort for zero visible forward movement.
So how do we keep you, the listener, motivated during that painful plateau period?
We keep you focused on the habit, not the outcome. And this ties directly into the role of habits in identity formation.
Right. Our sources reference James Clear's work here, emphasizing how small changes fundamentally shape who you believe you are.
So the immediate result isn't the point.
The identity shift is the point.
Precisely. The initial small change might not seem big in terms of external results. The scale hasn't moved, your vocabulary hasn't doubled, but they are crucial internally.
Because they redefine your self-concept over time.
Every single time you perform that 1% action, you are casting a vote for the person you want to become.
That's a powerful way to frame it. So if you read for 10 minutes today, you're casting a vote for the identity of a reader.
Mm-hmm.
If you practice a language for 5 minutes, you're casting a vote for the identity of a speaker or a disciplined learner.
And that identity shift is the true transformation that has to precede the eventual outcome.
That's the true power of consistency then. The goal shifts from this overwhelming, distant outcome, like I want to be fluent,
to an immediate, manageable identity. I am a person who practices daily.
And when you're faced with that choice practice or procrastinate, the person who identifies as a practitioner will act accordingly. They reinforce that positive habit loop. The outcome just follows the identity.
That's it. The outcome is a lagging measure of your identity.
Let's make this tangible. Let's circle back to some concrete, small, consistent steps.
The examples are powerful precisely because they minimize the friction of starting. They directly address that second barrier, perfectionism.
So the goal is to make the start so easy, it feels impossible to skip.
Yes. This could be reading just 10 minutes a day. It could be practicing English for a mere 5 minutes daily on an app.
It could even be a mental habit.
Absolutely. Like the habit of replacing one negative thought with a positive affirmation every time it appears.
5 minutes, that is entirely non-intimidating. And this leads to such inspiring real-life anecdotes, which are detailed in the source material.
It does.
I'm thinking of that one about the person who achieved genuine fluency in English. They didn't take a year off or sign up for some intense university program.
No, it was much simpler than that.
They achieved it simply by committing to listening to one 30-minute podcast in English every single day during their commute.
That is the perfect illustration of consistency trumping intensity.
Right.
They avoided the overwhelming nature of an intense study plan, which, as we said, leads to burnout. And instead they focus on the daily drip, drip, drip of continuous exposure.
And over 12 months, that daily 30-minute podcast, that accumulates.
It accumulates into well over 180 hours of focused immersion. And because it was integrated into an existing habit, the commute, the cognitive load of starting was zero.
The lesson for you, the listener who is feeling overwhelmed by a massive goal, is crystal clear. Do not aim for a life overhaul. Aim for one thing you can do for 5 minutes today. The small, consistent actions, repeated daily, are the only engine that creates massive results over time.
Which brings us back to that idea you mentioned, progress before perfection. When you're operating on the 1% rule, the action must, by definition, be imperfect.
A 5-minute flawed practice session is an essential vote for your new identity.
While a perfectly researched, flawlessly planned session that never happens is a vote for stagnation.
Absolutely. So we've broken down the barriers and we've activated the engine of compounding action. But action alone isn't enough, is it? Especially when you face those inevitable challenges and plateaus.
Not at all. And this takes us into section 3, the inner game training the mindset.
So taking action is crucial, but without the right mental framework, that action will always feel like pulling a heavy weight uphill.
Always. The realization here is profound. How we internally frame the challenge of change makes all the difference in our capacity to sustain that effort.
And this is where we get into the distinction that the sources highlight as the most fundamental psychological differentiator.
Between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset.
Okay, let's define these. What is a fixed mindset?
If a person operates with a fixed mindset, they believe their abilities, their intelligence, their capabilities are static, unchangeable traits.
So they think they're born with a certain amount of talent, and that's it.
Exactly. Their internal dialogue says, I'll never be good at this because I lack the fundamental talent. They view effort as pointless because the outcome is predetermined by their current level of ability.
So a fixed perspective treats failure as the absolute end.
It's proof.
If they fail, it's proof that they are fundamentally weak, confirming their belief. And this leads to them avoiding challenges altogether.
Of course, because challenging their ability puts their fixed self-worth at risk.
But the growth mindset sees the world radically differently.
Completely. It believes that capabilities are not fixed, they are malleable. They're developed through effort, strategy, and persistence.
So they believe in the possibility of improvement. They see failure as a temporary, necessary setback.
And they see effort as the key driver of mastery. Their dialogue is, I haven't mastered this yet, but I can improve.
The implication here is critical then. This difference in core belief is the gatekeeper to consistency.
It really is. Whether a person attempts change, embraces the difficulty of the plateau, and sustains that 1% effort is entirely dependent on which mindset framework they are operating within.
A fixed mindset guarantees you'll quit early. A growth mindset guarantees persistence.
And what determines this mindset, it's literally how our brain is wired to process information.
And this takes us to the truly fascinating neuropsychological concept of the reticular activating system, or RAS.
The RAS.
Yeah.
It sounds like a secret weapon, doesn't it?
It does. Explain the mechanism in more detail. How does this piece of our biology influence our perception of our own growth?
Okay, so the RAS is located at the base of your brain, and it acts as the ultimate gatekeeper and filter for your conscious mind.
A filter.
A filter. Every single second, our senses take in billions of bits of information, but we can only consciously process a tiny fraction of that. The RAS is wired to filter that literal fire hose of data based on what we prioritize or what we train it to notice.
Well, it's like having a personalized Google search running in the background of your brain, constantly filtering reality based on your input.
That's a perfect analogy. The sources integrate a really powerful example. The RAS is why, when you decide you want to buy a specific model of car,
You suddenly start seeing that exact car everywhere on the road.
everywhere, it wasn't that the number of cars magically increased. Your RAS had simply been instructed to prioritize that specific pattern.
Okay, so if we apply the RAS to our self-talk to barrier number 3, the implications are enormous.
Huge. If you repeatedly tell yourself, I can't do this, or the world is against me, your brain, functioning as that obedient search engine, will filter reality to find all the supporting evidence.
Every obstacle, every failure, every reason why the 1% effort is futile.
It creates a negative feedback loop. The fixed mindset feeds the negative self-talk, which
Right.
programs the RAS to prioritize failure data, which then reinforces the fixed mindset. It's a spiral.
But the reverse is also true.
The reverse is also true. If you intentionally shift that internal conversation to say, I am improving every day, or this is challenging, but I am learning, the RAS is now directed to focus on that progress.
On those small wins, on those opportunities.
You literally reprogram your perception of reality and start noticing the accumulating 1% gains.
So how do we actively hijack and reprogram this incredible system? How do we make sure it serves our goal of consistent 1% improvement?
The sources outline 3 powerful practical ways to train the mind to work for you, not against you.
Okay, what's number 1?
The first is through affirmations, or positive self-talk. This is the active, repetitive reshaping of those deeply ingrained negative thought patterns.
So for instance, replacing the internal narrative, I am terrible at this, with a present tense statement like, I am getting better every day.
Or, I am a person who handles challenges with persistence.
And this isn't just wishful thinking. The science behind this suggests that by repeating these statements, you are literally building new neural pathways that eventually challenge that default negative pathway.
You are consistently casting a vote for the growth mindset.
What's the second technique?
The second powerful technique is visualization.
So actually seeing yourself succeed.
Yes, intentionally and vividly seeing yourself successfully performing the habit and achieving the goal. Seeing yourself fluent in that language, seeing yourself completing the workout with ease, seeing yourself confidently executing the plan.
This tricks the brain, doesn't it?
It does. Because the neurological pathways activated during vivid, intentional visualization are surprisingly similar to those activated during the actual physical experience.
So when the brain sees you succeed repeatedly in your imagination, it lowers the perceived threat level, that fear of failure.
And it increases the genuine belief that success is possible. It reduces the resistance to taking the actual 1% step.
Okay, and the third technique?
The third, which is often overlooked but equally powerful, is gratitude practice.
Gratitude. How does that fit in?
This is a powerful mechanism for hijacking the RAS. When you consciously focus on what is going well, what you've achieved, what resources you have, what you're thankful for, you are actively training the brain to shift its filter.
From scarcity and lack to abundance and opportunity.
Precisely. Gratitude is a growth mindset lever. It pulls the brain out of the fear-based, fixed mindset loop and trains it toward a mindset of potential and possibility.
And by celebrating those small wins, you solidify the identity of a successful person who is moving forward. It reinforces the dopamine rewards for the 1% action.
This whole section really emphasizes that change is meticulous training, not magic.
Right.
It's about teaching the most powerful tool you own, your brain, to align its filters with your desired 1% outcome, ensuring that when you hit that plateau, your RAS is finding evidence of progress, not reasons to quit.
Moving from the intense focus on the inner game, we now need to address the external factors, because they significantly influence our capacity for growth.
Yes, and this is section 4. The outer game, optimizing your environment.
It's a common self-help fallacy, I think, to believe that transformation is purely an internal battle of willpower.
It's a huge one. Our sources remind us that while willpower is finite and unreliable, our environment is pervasive. It's constantly influencing our behavior.
So it's not just about what we do.
It's profoundly shaped by the influence of surroundings, the people we spend time with, and the physical and digital content we consume.
We are fundamentally context-dependent creatures, aren't we? Our motivation, our standards for effort, they're all highly influenced by our immediate surroundings.
Think about it this way. If your kitchen counter is always covered in junk food, you have to expend energy fighting that environment every single time you walk past.
Right. If your environment is set up for failure, your willpower will eventually just erode.
Which brings us to a quote cited in the sources, a famous saying, but it's absolutely brutal in its behavioral honesty.
Let me guess. The one about the 5 people.
That's the one. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
That's a challenging thought. It suggests that our personal habits are socially contagious, whether we realize it or not.
It's behavioral mathematics applied to sociology. If you are surrounded by negative, chronically unmotivated people,
People who complain constantly, view effort cynically, choose stagnation.
it is extraordinarily difficult, if not impossible, to maintain high levels of motivation and positive energy. Their habits become your subconscious default.
So if they're constantly checking social media or spending impulsively, those behaviors become normalized for you.
Absolutely. But conversely, if you surround yourself with positive, goal-driven individuals, people who are actively building, learning, and progressing,
And their energy, their standards, their whole accountability structure becomes your default expectation. Their idea of normal effort becomes your baseline.
that is the power of proximity. It shifts the standard for what is considered acceptable behavior. If everyone around you is ambitious and doing their 1% daily improvement, sitting still feels uncomfortable.
But if everyone around you is passive and cynical, taking action feels like this massive, unnecessary, and frankly weird effort.
We conform to the environment even when we don't realize we're doing it.
So the goal for you, the listener, is to intentionally construct an environment that supports the 1% identity you're trying to build.
And the sources provide 3 clear, actionable ways to build this supportive environment.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, Following inspirational people. This is about consciously curating your information stream. This applies to authors you read, speakers you listen to, or specific positive social media accounts you follow.
You're proactively choosing external inputs that foster a growth mindset.
It's passive RAS reprogramming, isn't it?
It is. You don't have to actively listen to a full lecture, just consuming content that pushes you toward growth, success stories, new ideas. It helps your reticular activating system filter for progress and opportunity.
Which makes those 1% actions seem more viable.
Okay, what's the second way?
The second way is highly effective for accelerating the adoption of new, difficult 1% habits. Joining communities.
So this means finding groups.
Yes, whether they are physical book clubs, online learning communities for a language, accountability fitness groups, or personal development forums.
When you're part of a community that shares your value system of growth, you get this powerful feedback loop that prevents you from stalling during that plateau phase.
You have practice partners, people who normalize making mistakes, people to share struggles with, and others to celebrate progress alongside.
Let's use my expanded English learning anecdote again here. I hit that plateau where practice felt pointless.
Right. What tangible difference did joining a community make that individual willpower could not?
It made all the difference because it provided accountability outside of myself. When I was practicing alone, skipping a day just meant disappointing myself, which was really easy to rationalize away.
Of course.
But when I joined a group that met 3 times a week, skipping meant disappointing the group. That external social reinforcement normalized making mistakes, which combated the internal fear of failure.
And it provided the social push to keep going when your motivation dipped.
It forced me to keep casting those 1% votes. The community essentially became my environment's immune system against stagnation.
I love that framing, an immune system against stagnation.
Yeah.
Okay, and the third way to optimize your environment.
And this one might be the hardest.
It often is, because it requires setting boundaries, reducing negative exposure,
So this means actively limiting the time spent with people who constantly complain.
or strategically cutting down on negative news cycles and social media that drain your mental capacity without providing any actionable value.
This is really an act of self-preservation. Your emotional and mental energy are finite resources. They're essential for fueling your 1% efforts.
And you must ruthlessly protect that capacity from things and people that actively deplete it.
This isn't about cutting off loved ones necessarily, but about setting firm boundaries on how often and for how long you engage with negativity.
Absolutely. So we leave this section with a final practical question for you, the listener.
A call to action.
Who are the 5 people you spend the most time with? Be brutally honest about their energy and their habits. Are they helping you compound your growth, or are they implicitly holding you back to their own average?
And if the answer is the latter, then making adjustments to curate a more inspiring and uplifting social environment is a critical strategic move.
It's not just a nice to have, it's essential.
To synthesize all of today's deep dive, let's bring it back to the core finding we extracted from all these sources.
Let's do it.
We've established that the radical, life-changing transformation you were seeking is entirely within your control.
It is.
It is not reliant on some massive lottery win or a sudden, dramatic bolt of lightning.
The central message is unequivocally clear. You have far more control over the daily trajectory of your life than the fixed mindset would have you believe.
So transformation is the result of the combined compounding effect of 2 things.
First, consistently taking small, often boring daily steps, the 1% rule.
And second,
And second, building the right internal framework and external environment to support and sustain those small steps.
it's important to reinforce that progress doesn't happen overnight. It's the result of focused, mundane persistence.
But every single 1% step you take today, no matter how tiny it seems, gets you measurably closer to the person you want to be a year from now.
And we should quickly touch upon something that was evident throughout our sources.
The necessity of specific language.
Right. We didn't need a whole separate section for vocabulary because we utilized key terms throughout this discussion.
Like compounding, reticular activating system, fixed mindset, and plateau of latent potential.
And having that precise, powerful language available enhances our ability to understand, to articulate, and to solidify our commitment to these complex ideas.
It's a 1% improvement in communication that reinforces the entire strategy.
So for our final provocative thought, let's revisit the barrier we started with, the fear of failure.
Back to the beginning.
If that fear of trying and possibly failing is what keeps you anchored in place, you need to reevaluate the risk based on the compounding math we talked about.
And here's the brutal, unvarnished truth.
The true massive risk is not trying and failing at 1% increments.
No.
The true risk is remaining stagnant, remaining the average of the people and the habits that are currently holding you back, knowing that you could have been 37 times better a year from now simply by being 1% better every day.
So ask yourself this: what single imperfect 1% change can you make right now, today, that ensures your 5-person average, that internal and external sum of your influences, is actively improving?
Whatever that is.
Take that first imperfect step.